So I'm sitting at an airport right now, and I wanted to talk about the future of academic conferences. I'm just finishing one up, and I'm going to another one. So the one I just finished is Academy of Management. The other one I'm going to is I organize a small conference on my particular field in Monterey, California. So, what is the future of academic conferences? I think if you take a sort of practical approach to the future of academic conferences, right, and you just think of it as knowledge production, and you're thinking of producing, new knowledge from this activity, whether it is that you're presenting or you're thinking about knowledge. I think it's actually, the future is quite grim, because I think we can replicate and mimic some of these things based on online virtual events. So for example, if you're thinking of just presenting research and sort of having that effort of presenting research, it's pretty easy to do, to present the particular research. I do that all the time on YouTube, right? And if you're thinking about it as writing for deadlines and doing these academic conferences, you're going to quickly discover that if you had a virtual event, you would do the same thing. Now, that is the... Sorry, 1 second.
My name is Jim. I am the agent who will take care of your flight this afternoon.
Okay, so before you get bored, I guess I should talk over this fella. So if you think about it as a social process instead, and if you think about research as more of a social game, which is a lot of what research is about, this is why people don't do YouTube videos in airports. So if you think of it as a social game, there's a tremendous amount of inherent value that gets generated by academic conferences. It's hard to put your finger on, because much of academia is really just a social process where you are trying to meet people, where you're trying to not necessarily meet them and sort of have something that's productive that come out of it, but you can think of academic knowledge production as more of a group behavior, and you're thinking about eventually in 10 years knowing who does what, and at that point you might be able to call upon them for maybe insight into a particular problem, understanding how something might work. You might sort of reach out to them. Now, I know that academic fields really differ in terms of what is the, how much your labs work together, for example, but at least in the social sciences, it's somewhat common to do collaborative work together or think about ways that you can work together. And so without the academic conferences, without doing these efforts, you quickly miss out on a lot of opportunities that are really, really, really quite valuable. And it's usually not like you meet a whole bunch of people, right? Like at an academic conference, I don't meet that many people, and I stay away from a lot of the sort of meet and greet stuff because I think it's really cheesy. However, you do bump into people, one or two, that are actually quite nice, and you might build a relationship with them over years. And it's not necessarily something where you build a relationship immediately, but it's something where you build relationships over the long run. You might bump into them 3, 4, 5 times, and you're sort of working on similar projects. You might eventually start building a friendship and how to actually work together, or a co-authorship. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a friendship because it's a work relationship. But, that you have to sort of think about this as it's a social process. And then another thing that's really important is just being present is helpful, because then people understand what you're working on and they sort of identify you in these particular areas. And without that presence, you miss out on a lot of opportunities in the sense that they are going to reach out to you when you come across something, or they come across something, right? So you want to have that sort of presence knowing that people recognize you for what you actually do. And these opportunities are not present with any sort of virtual events. It's hard to get that because you need to have that high status at the beginning to be identified to participate in those virtual events. So as a process, as a social process, as something that is evolving over time, as something that is a very humanistic approach to science, academic conferences are not dying. In fact, there's probably greater need for them as we become more isolated. So we might actually start seeing more of them as we become more isolated in their different areas. So I think it's going to be different, but they definitely are not dying, and there's a huge future for them. So with that, that's what I wanted to talk about. And good luck. Take care, and have a wonderful day.